So welcome to the Pre-PA/Nursing Club. This is a pre-PA meeting, and we have our guest speaker today as Miss Haley Witt, and she is a current PA student, so we're going to hear all about her journey.
Hi guys. Kaitlyn, did you get the slides that I sent you?
Yes, I'm opening them right now.
Okay, perfect.
All right, you should be all set.
Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Haley. I'm currently a PA student at Toro University in the Bay of California, so a little bit of ways from you guys. And I'm just going to give you, so basically what I'm going to do today is I'm going to start off with just like a brief little, or a couple of slides to tell you about PA, and it kind of versus a couple other medical professions as well. And then I'll go into my own personal experience, and then I'll go into a Q&A, okay? Okay, so let's get going. Okay, so why PA? US News ranked PA as one of the top 3 best jobs right now. So, and it's been ranked top 3 for the last couple of years, and it's that way for a reason. So there's several things that attracted me to the profession. Life balance was a big one. So I want to be very involved with my family when I eventually have one. So I can be a PA, I can switch to part-time and still make a really good salary, and still, provide my patients with quality care while living my life as well. So that was a big one for me. So there's also lateral mobility. And what that is that you can move between specialties. So if you're like me, I constantly need to be challenged by something. I can't just like sit in one subject and just be completely amazed by it for the rest of my life. So say I want to switch to derm, or I want to switch to general surgery, I want to go into vascular surgery, or I want to go into oncology, you have the opportunity to do that as a PA, which is very unique. So also less schooling. Yeah, undergrad was a lot. Especially going through your prerequisites, it's a lot of work. So when I was choosing between like PA and MD, because I was thinking about the physician route, the schooling was definitely a big turnoff for me. And so this was a really good option, because once you graduate from your undergrad, you're going to be going into looking at around a 2 to 3 year program, which is relatively short. And then it's still a pretty good salary. So on average, physicians will make around $250,000. PAs will make average $115,000 according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. But there's always room to grow, and it depends on what you specialize in. It also depends on what state you're in, and a bunch of other factors. So I've seen some people getting pretty close to a physician salary as a PA, and it's kind of common. So that's really cool. Next slide. Okay, so this is where I'm going to go into comparing it to other professions in the medical field. Okay, so let me switch my little toggle around so I can see. Okay, so PA, you work in collaboration with a MD or a DO. You are not allowed to work on your own. If any of you have worked in a clinical setting, if there's a PA there or an NP there, there's probably going to be a doctor there. They don't necessarily have to be on the premises, but a PA can't actually start their own practice. An MD works independently, can start their own practice. They perform surgery, and PAs can usually be a first assist, as well as NPs. And then NP guidelines depend on the state, as well as PAs guidelines depend on the state. So California, you can practice pretty much the full extent of your license, with some exceptions. You'll kind of learn about that as you go through. In California, I think we are allowed to prescribe different types of opioids, which in some states, I don't think you're allowed to do that. Let's see. And then NP, yeah. No, you can get it in this one. Okay, so I kind of already talked about this. PA salary is around $115,000, MD is around $250K, NP is around 103. Again, that could vary from state to state, specialty to specialty. Okay, so education timeline breakdown. So PA, you're going to get your 4-year bachelor, and then you're going to go into a 2 to 3 year master program. So the lowest I've seen PA programs go to is about 26 months, I want to say at the very lowest, and my program actually hits pretty much the max of how long it can be, which is 33 months. And that's because I'm doing a dual degree. So I'm also getting a MPH, so a master's in public health concurrently while I'm getting my master's in physician's assistant studies. For MD, you're going to get your 4-year bachelor's degree, then you have 4 years in medical school, then you have 3 to 7 years of your residency, and then you can choose to do fellowships after, it can depend on how long the fellowship is. And NP, so you usually do 4 years BSN. NP I'm not so familiar with, so I could have some of this a little bit weird. But 2 to 3 years of an NP program, and then if you didn't get your BSN, some programs do a joint nursing NP program. Like I was working in a pain management clinic, and my friend he had finished his bachelor's, but it wasn't a BSN, and then he got accepted into an NP school that did the whole nursing and NP school in one go. So that was really cool. Okay. So do you have any questions about any of those stats or any of those details before I go into my own personal experience?
You can type it into the chat box if you have any questions, and I can
Yeah.
read them out loud.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go into my own personal experience. Okay, so I graduated, so I'm from the Central Valley in California. It is a very ag area. My dad was a cowboy. My family, my mom's side of the family actually immigrated from Mexico. And so growing up, I was really ag. I grew up working on dairy farms, going to like rodeos and stuff and doing all that stuff. So when I went to college, my major was actually dairy science. So that was very interesting. And I definitely was asked about that during my interview process as to why I was dairy science, why I wasn't pursuing veterinary medicine. And I told them I was raised in an ag area. Veterinary medicine had crossed my mind, but it wasn't the right path for me in the end. So that's something I had to explain. But I still was able to get my bachelor's degree in dairy science, do a lot of the prereqs, and then I think I took 3 classes post-bac in order to finish up prerequisites for applying to PA school. And then when I applied, my first round, I got in first round to my top choice school, so that was really awesome. But it initially was going to be a tester round for me, so I only ended up applying to 5 schools. But if you're being serious about applying and you're not doing a tester round, I would highly recommend applying to more than just 5 schools, because obviously your statistics in getting in are going to go like down a lot. So yeah, that's basically my experience. Now I'm 3 weeks into my PA program. It is very hard. I'm currently taking 9 classes, which is more than the average PA student, but that's again because I'm in my MPH as well. So yes, and I can talk about, my experience gaining like PCE, as well as my healthcare experience, like volunteering, how I got my PCE. So I didn't start gaining PCE until after I graduated undergrad, and I'm definitely an outlier in that aspect. I know a lot of people started getting their experience probably their freshman year of college, maybe like the summer of their freshman year, or like, sometimes starting in their undergraduate program. And I definitely knew I was behind in the game when I started. So I was very lucky to have doctors accept me into their practices and allow me to gain a lot of patient care hours pretty quickly. I definitely don't recommend that. When people ask me when they should start gaining hours, the sooner you can start getting hours, the better, just so you can spread it over a long period of time. And so you aren't so stressed out, because I was taking 4 prerequisite classes, working at a primary care clinic, volunteering at a Veterans Affairs clinic as a pharmacy tech, and then doing like other volunteer work on the outside. And so I had no social life. My boyfriend absolutely did not like me during this time. So it requires a lot of sacrifice, and that's something you just have to be okay with. And if you have like those really supportive loved ones and friends in your life, they'll definitely understand. Sometimes you're not going to have that. Sometimes, you know, people just have to deal with it, but it definitely does require a lot of sacrifice, but it's definitely worth it in the end. Like, I'm only 3 weeks into my program and I can already tell like this is such a good path for me. So yeah. Does anyone have any questions or want me to explain anything a little bit more, like about the application process, about gaining patient care experience, or anything like that?
I have one thing that I'm curious about. Can you just talk about the difference between like the dual degree versus just like what a regular PA degree would be?
Yeah, definitely. So with just your PA degree, you're mainly going to be just doing your PA classes. So that could be like your pharmacology, your clinical applications, your like there's a you might have to do a basics in science, but it's mainly your clinical oriented. So you're only working towards your like how to prescribe medications, how to, you know, just do everything once you go into your professional career. But with mine, with the MPH, basically what I'm studying also is how my environment affects my patient. So what I really love about the MPH portion of my degree is that I can not only analyze my patient from a clinical aspect with my PA portion, but then I can also look at their environment and see how their environment is in fact affecting them as well, coming from their situation, like whether in a minority or if we're in an area with really bad pollution, or if we're in an area that, you know, it's very Spanish speaking and there's not a lot of Spanish speaking providers, how that's affecting them, how that's affecting them, their medication usage, if they're taking their medications correctly because of a lack of understanding. So I wanted that specifically because I came out of an underserved area, and Bakersfield is an underserved area in California, and it affected my family, especially affected my grandma when she moved here. So I think it's really important that you understand the environment your patient is coming from in order to create a better health outcome for them and their whole every single aspect of their entire life. So I don't want to just like prescribe medication and say, hey, here's your pills, hope this works. You know, I want to do something that's proactive and something that's, you know, hey, this is how we can prevent these problems in the future, or this is how we can create a better, healthier life for you now moving forward, and not just treat the problem, you know, be proactive with your health. So yeah.
Well, that was a great explanation. Thank you very much. All right. So the first thing was, I don't remember if you mentioned this already, but did you go straight into PA school after undergrad, or did you take a gap year?
So I did take a gap year. Like I said, I didn't have any patient care experience yet. So I needed to get that. That's one big difference between if you're applying to PA school versus MD or DO, is you can apply to med school basically with no experience. I don't necessarily agree with it, but as a PA, they really want you to have some type of hands-on experience going in. And I think that's really valuable. So I did spend one gap year, and I ended up applying. I'm trying to think. I applied the spring of my gap year. So yeah, I took like I guess it's like a year and a half gap, because like when you think about it, you apply in spring and then you get your interviews like fall, winter, and then you get your acceptance. So it's like basically almost a 2-year when you take 1 year before applying.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Could you, so mainly the questions are asking about how you got patient care hours and about specifics.
Yeah.
So as like officers, we're planning on talking about that, how to get hours and stuff during COVID.
Yeah.
So if you want to talk more specifically about how you got your hours, I think that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we're in a very different situation with COVID. A lot of practices are barely open. I don't know if it's necessarily different where you guys are at, but clinics here and offices here are very limited with their hours, accepting patients, and therefore accepting, you know, people to shadow or like new people to come in. And especially being an undergrad, not a lot of you are certified in things, but sometimes you can get a CNA or MA. It just depends. However, there's a lot of things you can do without going into a doctor's office. I've heard of some doctors actually letting their people shadow them through like Zoom or something. I'm not necessarily sure how they do that. But what I did when I started gaining or looking to gain PCE was I flooded doctor's offices in my area, and I was like, hey, can you take me? Like, I'll do whatever you want. Like, I'll pick up the trash. Like, you just have to be really humble, and you have to take whatever job they can give you, because if they see that you work hard, they're going to push you up and they're going to give you more opportunities, and that could lead to a better position, the position you need to start getting your, qualified hours. So, but also there's other ways you can, so volunteering is a big part of your application. It's not just your PCE, so they want to see, a lot of schools want to see that you actually care for your community, you care for your fellow man, like you're empathetic, right? So, it's important in being a good provider is to show that you care about people, right? So I know you can write letters to, nursing homes are shut down right now. So you can write letters to people in the nursing homes. I know you can call people in nursing homes. I know that you can volunteer to go get groceries for elderly people who can't necessarily go out into the public right now because they're high-risk patients. So there's a lot of different things that don't require a ton of effort that will help you start to build your application during COVID. It's definitely going to be a little bit harder to get that PCE during COVID if you weren't already established as like a CNA or an MA or a Scribe prior. But you're just going to have to look around. And I honestly think that boards are going to see that it was really hard for students to get PCE during this time. So I guarantee they're going to lower the hours, or they're going to make some type of accommodations for students.
Thank you for that. I think that was very helpful. Could you maybe talk about like the average number of hours in your class, at least, that people have coming in?
Yeah. So I think ours averaged around 2,000. I think when I applied, I had, 1,500. So I definitely was on the lower end. I know some schools that I wanted to apply to were, I think Stanford they averaged 5,000 with outliers of like 15,000. Because, a lot of PAs, the average age of a PA student is 27. So I think I was asking around my class, and I'm pretty sure I'm probably one of the younger ones in my class. But so a lot of these people who have all these hours were an EMT for several years, or were, an MA for several years. They have a lot of experience. So when you're going to apply, make sure you know the stats of the school. So I only applied to schools that had around my average of hours, like 2,000 or around there. But I wasn't going to apply to Stanford because they had 5,000 hours on average. I wasn't going to be a strong applicant, and I didn't have a lot of money to spend. So, just be smart with who you're applying to. Like, of course, have those reach schools, of course, have those goals. But also, at the end of the day, no matter what program you go to, you're going to be a PA, which is what you want, right? So there definitely is a strategy to applying.
All right, thank you. So now just more specifically about your PA program, like what's happening? Is it all virtual, or is it part online, part in person?
Yeah.
Oh
gosh, this is such a so unfortunately my program is completely remote right now, which is such a bummer, because I'm interested in surgery, in general surgery, and like vascular surgery. So getting that cadaver lab was really, really important for me. And it's honestly one of the major reasons I chose my school, is because on interview day, they took us into the cadaver lab, and it was insane. Like, I totally was geeking out, and I was like, dude, this is the coolest thing ever. There's like so much for us to work with, so many technologies in the lab, and it's going to be great when I'm going into surgery, right? So unfortunately right now we're completely remote, but we're looking to, I know we were talking to our director, and we're hoping to go somewhat hybrid starting in January, but it's not set in stone yet because we don't know what's going to happen with cases and vaccinations and everything like that. So they're not guaranteeing it by any means.
Okay, so I know that you said you're looking forward to maybe potentially doing surgery or something. Mm-hmm. What is that like? Like, I know you need extra education for it. Mm-hmm. What kind of extra education would that be?
So generally, coming out of PE school, so you're going to go on your rotations. Some of them are going to be ER, some of them might be surgery. So that's like a little bit of experience. But if anyone's going to accept you into or offer you position in surgery, generally, as far as I've heard, they like to have you right out of PA school so the doctor can train you himself, or the PA can like show you how to first assist, like how they do it in their clinic, you know. But for the most part, like, yes, you're learning a lot in your classes and you're learning on the science and the medicine behind it. But as far as your hands-on training, you're learning that in your rotations, your 6-week rotations, and then you're going after you get your job offer, and you're learning a lot on the job as well. You know, that's the same thing for MDs is, you know, they go through their, you know, residencies and stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Next question, how has the transition been into your program? Many people find it overwhelming to be a normal PA program, but you have an additional degree to work towards. Is there a big difference between your coursework load and your peers?
Between my peers and like only PA programs? Okay, so yeah, I definitely have a larger course load than the average PA student. And you know, you're carrying an extra degree, you're gonna have extra classes. With that being said, I definitely think it's worth it. And I think, you know, if you're a good student in your undergrad and you know how to be flexible with your studies and to, you know, just really go with the flow and like be really driven, it shouldn't be a problem. You know, you prioritize and stuff like that. So yes, my course load is a lot a lot more than the average PA student, but you know, it's for a good reason and it's for a good cause. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to make me a better provider. I know Toro is the only school that requires an MPH, but I know other PA schools offer the MPH option, but it is not an option for us.
All right. Well, it doesn't seem like there are any more questions aside from just general how you get your hours. And like I said, we're going to do that at the end. So if anyone else has any more questions, feel free to ask. If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
I want to say everyone go follow Haley Witt on Instagram. That's how I found out about her. She's very great at posting updates and everything. I highly recommend you follow her. I will post her Instagram at tag, whatever it's called, in the email after this meeting. So.
Yeah, definitely. If you guys ever have any questions, like where are you guys at in your application process? Like what year are you guys, like are some of you applying right now or thinking of applying, you know, at the end of this year in spring? Or are you guys still wondering if you want to be a PA or if you want to go in, because I know it's a PA nursing club, right?
Yeah.
So where are you guys at in your process? If anyone wants to be so bold as to unmute.
I was gonna say, we have, I think, a lot of different people. People might be freshmen in this club who are still deciding PA versus another profession, but I also think we have some people who are getting ready to apply, or people who are getting their hours, maybe seniors who are graduating and just need more hours before they apply. So I think we have a broad spectrum of people.
Okay, yeah, definitely. So for people who are graduating and looking to get their hours, don't be okay with a gap year, because a lot of people do it. A lot of people do several gap years. Like I know with my family, with how I was raised in a very strict family. So my family just wanted to see results right away. So you know, there's a lot of pressure there. But if you want to take like 2 to 3 years to like be an EMT and get really good experience, because like when you get that experience and then you go into PA school, you're gonna have a huge upper hand on a lot of people. Like I have students, or some of my peers have been working in primary care as a scribe, or they've been EMT, and they know so much about so many medications that I can only, you know, dream about. So it's not a bad thing to take a couple of gap years. And if you take a couple of tries to get in or a couple application cycles, that's completely normal. Like in my interview, I met someone who she was already at Toro, but she had applied, I think, 3 or 4 times before she got in. So it's completely normal. Be comfortable with it. Don't like let anyone push you if you're not ready to go or whatever, but it's fine. Don't stress too much, because I know I stressed a lot, especially with like writing the personal statements and making sure my hours were perfect and making sure they qualified in CASPA. And so just make sure you live a balanced life. You know, if you want to be a PA, that's like should be at the core of your values, is to live a balanced life. And that can be easily lost when you're like doing your prereqs and trying to fill out applications and carrying like a job. Like I used to, when I in college, I had a couple of jobs and I was waking up at 3:30 in the morning to go like milk cows, you know. So it's a very stressful time in your life. So don't feel like you need to have it all together and to be perfect.
We have another question. What are your tips on staying motivated?
Tips on staying motivated. I'd say there's a lot of things you can do to stay motivated. So again, balanced lifestyle. Make sure you're having a social life, because like if you are constantly studying, like it's gonna affect your mental health whether you want to believe it or not. Like that's how I was, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities. But the second I started, you know, having life balance and like being social, as well as, you know, prioritizing my studies as well. But you know, you just have to find a balance. But as far as finding motivation to keep going, a lot of that you will find in your reason why. And when you say like your reason why, like for me, why I decided to go into medicine was because of my dad. So my dad passed away when I was pretty young because of our lack of connection to healthcare, and because we were underserved, and because we were, you know, not well off. So that was my reason why. And so, and like my grandma's my reason why is because she didn't get a really good healthcare when she moved here from Mexico, nor did like my great grandpa and everything. So you have to have reasons why that initially spark your passion in medicine. And then once you start gaining your PCE, you're going to find individuals who are just like, wow, like this is another reason why. Like you're a stranger, but like you're my reason why. And you know, like you'll find people who are similar to you, who have had like similar struggles to you, and you being able to help them and to honestly create a positive in their life should be your motivation. Because you know, at the end of the day, like yes, it's a nice job, you have life balance, like it's a good salary, but you're usually in it because you know you care. So when you find those people who make a really strong impact, like those patients that you meet, you know, write that story down and like look back to it. Like when you're having a really hard day and you're like, I can't pass this class, you know, I feel like I'm trying so hard. Just like go back to that story or go back to your reason why and be like, this is why I'm going to pass this class. This is why I'm going to put in the extra work to complete this, is because I want to eventually be the first person to help this person live a better life.
And then I know you said you were taking 9 classes and everything.
Yeah.
Do you have a study schedule or other strategies on
um
your balance?
yeah, study 24/7. You definitely, I'm still working out my study schedule. So in undergrad, I was very good at setting the information a couple days before the test. Sometimes I don't recommend, I would not really go to lecture a lot, just because like I'm the type of person who teaches myself. And again, go to your classes if you aren't the type of person to teach yourself. But I could study a couple days before an exam and I do fine. But in PA school, it's completely different. You need to be studying hard, and you need to be studying often, because like this isn't stuff you're just going to take a test on and then you can forget about it. You know, like this is something you're going to use for the rest of your life. So I try to spread out my study schedule, and I'll crank out like all of my assignments, like my hard due date assignments first. Like if I get a paper for my MPH class, which is, I've gotten like I think 6 papers and it's only been like 3 weeks. So the second I get a paper or some type of hard assignment like that, I get it done right away, just so I can focus on studying, you know, and focus on performing well in the exam and actually really learning about the information. Because if you're like me, you can't like I can't focus if I have something due, you know. So I just like to get that out of the way just so I can study and like make sure I perform well and make sure like I really understand that material. Because like at the end of the day, I hate not going into a test being confident, and so I'm going to do like my damnedest to freaking be a rock star on that test.
All right, thank you. Do we have any more questions specifically for Haley? There are a lot of questions about like the PCE hours, and like I said, we will get to that. But are there any specific ones that Haley can answer? All right, well, I have one more for you.
Okay.
Could you just talk a little bit about like a personal statement, like what's involved and is that looked upon and everything?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. Oh, before I talk about that, there's also one thing that I always like to stress in an application, is make sure you have some type of leadership role. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be a leader of a club. Like after I graduated, I started a pre-health club on my JC's campus where I was taking post-bac. So that obviously is good leadership roles. But there's other things you can do, like, like get a couple people together and have a canned food drive and then end up delivering that canned food to like a homeless population or a homeless shelter in your area. So that's example of leadership. Leadership, I think, is crucial in an application because while you're a PA and you're, not necessarily leading the show, you're not an MD or a DO, it's still important for you to be a leader because a lot of the times, doctors won't be there. Like I was working in a pain management clinic and the doctors wouldn't always be there. So it would just be the PA. So you need to be able to still lead and you need to be able to show that you can do that on an application. But getting to the personal statement, I've read through a lot of personal statements. I was editing them over the quarantine because I was just like hanging out on a beach, so might as well. But there's a lot you need in your personal statement. And if there's any advice I can give you is don't list anything that was in your CASPA application. Don't list your experience. Don't say, oh, I roomed patients, I took vitals, and that was really cool. No, that you have a place in your application for that already. What you want in your personal statement is a story that shows like your why, like I was talking about earlier. So I think I started off my personal statement with like literally painting a picture to my board reviewers saying, I think I started off like I was standing on a rock, like in the middle of the night, like wondering where my parents were. So like I created a feeling for the reader, it wasn't just like, hi, my name is this is what I've done. You want to put your author and your reader into a story so they can feel that emotion that you felt. Like, because the most important thing, the best thing you can do is make a person feel why you want to be a PA. You want them to understand like and feel your passion behind the paper, and that's so hard to do. But when you paint a story and when you just like become an author to your personal statement and just like describe the environment that was around you, describe like the blood rushing to your cheeks, that feeling of like, fire, like you can put that on paper and they'll feel that and they'll be like, dang, I just read through 10 essays, but wow, that one where she was describing, like her heart racing, and, they're going to remember that, And then also another tip is I worked for some MDs who were board reviewers for Toro and a couple other schools, and they said, try to keep your personal statement down to 1 page, which I know for a lot of people, myself included, was terrifying to think about because I'm like, I don't have a lot of space anyway, so how am I going to get this down to 1 page? He said, trust me, because he said, how I review papers is that I look at them, and if they're longer than 1 page, I put them in a separate pile and I want to read them later because they're long. You can get your point across with being concise, So make sure you choose your words wisely and make sure they're effective. And again, don't list anything that's on your resume already. Just tell your story.
All right, well, I don't have any more questions. You inspired me. I think that was the best. You were like the best person I could have for the first meeting. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
That was perfect. So
Good.
you're free to stay or you're welcome to leave, whatever you want.
Okay.
The officers are just going to talk about like getting hours and stuff for patient care.
Mm-hmm.
But again, thank you so much. And I will send out your information. So everyone, please go follow her, and hopefully she'll still inspire you as you go through her journey with her.
Yeah, and if any of you ever like have any questions, I always encourage people to reach out and help me and ask those questions, because I had so many people help me throughout my process and like that's one things I learned is like when you get somewhere, make sure you turn around and help the next, like what's that song? Help the next person in line. I'm sure you all heard it. But so you really, and like once you become PAs or once you get into your nursing programs or whatever program, like make sure you turn around and like help the next person in line, because like at the end of the day, you're all going to be peers. You're all going to be working towards a common goal of like making the world a better freaking place. So yeah, always feel free to message me. You're never going to be bothering me with questions. I love to help.
All right. Well, thank you very much for
Of course.
everything. That was perfect.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys because I gotta keep studying.
Yes,
but
good luck with everything.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes, we're all rooting for you. So good luck in PA school.
Okay, thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye. All right. So, how we have organized the next part that's upcoming. So each of the officers have a different role about what they've done, their certifications, all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to go through everything. So the first thing that we're going to talk about, so there are many ways that you can get hours. So you can get certifications and stuff, and then you don't have to, and then we're also going to talk about volunteering. All right, so those three aspects. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is getting certifications. So during COVID, I think it would be a great time for you guys, especially because NC State is ending their semester early, to get a certification. So the two jobs that I know about most are both CNA and EMT. So Alex is going to talk about EMT later on, but I am a CNA, so if you have any questions, I would be happy to share that with you. So for a CNA, so basically there are a variety of jobs, but so what the course is like to get the certification is it's about a month-long process, or at least if you do it continuously, it's about a month-long process. There are a certain number of hours you need in classroom. I forget the exact amount. I did this a year ago. But anyway, it's basically like going back to high school, like 5 days a week, like 7-hour days. But the actual process of getting a certification, it was very easy, and it was a lot of work, but it wasn't terribly too much, and I didn't find the exam to be terribly hard. So what it is you go to school basically for a month. You're in classroom for like 3 weeks, I believe, and then that last week you actually go into a nursing home and you practice the skills. So you have your advisor, you have your classmates all there, so you get life experience. And then in about a month or so, you schedule your exam. So there's the written exam, which you have to take. It's multiple choice. I remember it wasn't hard. You need an 80 to pass, 80%. And then also there's another portion of the exam where you have to bring like a family member or someone to practice the skills that you learned. You only practice 3 skills, but you don't know what the skills are until you walk into the exam, which can be a little intimidating, but the skills aren't very hard. So I have full confidence that you guys will be able to do it. Can you retake the exam if you don't pass the first time? Yes, you can. I believe that you have 1 chance, but you might have 2. I'm not exactly sure. But like I said, it's not terribly hard. You should be fine.
I will say, so I took my exam a year after I finished my class. It was like the day before the class experience would expire, and I was like, well, might as well take it, and my school had paid for it, so I was like, whatever. You can take that test without studying, and I did not study beforehand. The chances of anyone not passing are extremely slim. The portion that you really do have to practice on is like the actual skills, like you were saying. But you could probably take that exam without ever entering the class, so I would not worry about that.
Yeah, so no, that was perfect. Thank you. So as far as what you can do with the certification, so you can work in like nursing homes and areas like that, or you can also do like visiting houses, which is what I do as my job. So I'm in a company, I'm from Massachusetts, so it's up there. So I'm not really sure what's available down here, but I'm sure they have stuff like it. But anyway, you get in your degree, you get your CNA and home health aid. So home health aid just means that you can go to the person's house and do all the same skills. And also like there's a little bit like cleaning or cooking or something like that. It's very simple. It's not hard, but it is like a dual degree. So it works out great. So in my job, I do go to the people's houses. I help them with whatever task they need. Usually it's like because they can't vacuum or something like that, or they have trouble showering. CNA in a nursing home, it's not as glorified as like an EMT would be, which you'll hear about later. But it's definitely a lot easier to find a job, at least from my, like what I've heard. Most people need CNAs and they want them, and so they're hiring right away. So I always advise students to get a CNA degree. But yeah, and so if you have any questions, I think there are a couple questions in the chat box. Give me 1 second. So did you take your class during the semester or on a school break? So I took mine, it was in June. So the semester here ended in May. I took it the month of June. And then in July, the end of July, was when I took my test and ended up passing. Very excited. It was great. Are there any online versions for the CNA class where you can go at your own pace? I mean, now because of COVID, there might be. I took mine through Red Cross, and you definitely had to be in person for it. Yeah, but they always said that you had to be there for 7 hours and we'd get out early, so it was never really 7 hours, and it was fine. And the course, like, they definitely drag out the amount of time, so like you have free time in the class too. It wasn't a huge time commitment or anything, so you definitely can go at your own pace during the class too. Will we be able to get our CNA, since I'm assuming there probably won't be the in-class portion, because I was planning on getting it over winter break. So that's great. I highly recommend getting it. I can't speak for what's happening right now, which I probably should have researched, so my apologies.
There is a class right now. I think we just got an email for it in the last week or so, either on the Right Easterlyn listserv or another one, and I can look it up so we can have the link. But there are classes right now, so if you look, you can find them, I think.
Yeah, all right. The only other thing that I would say is I did my class through Red Cross. There are a bunch of places that offer it, so don't be discouraged to look elsewhere. But Red Cross I thought was really great in preparing me. Keely, I'm sure your place was great too, obviously, if you passed very easily. All right, so now I think it's time to move on to EMT, which you also need a certification for.
Hi everyone. Okay, so I do have my EMT certification. Because of COVID, I haven't been able to put the direct EMT certification into practice yet, but I can tell you a little bit about the process of getting it. I got mine last summer at Lenore Community College, and it was actually a hybrid program that lasted the majority of the summer. So I started it mid-June and I ended actually in September. And pretty much the entire thing was virtual, where I was doing the exams and I was reading the lectures all on my own. And then I had 3 separate weekends where we would go in person and work on our clinical skills. And that was kind of my experience with that. And then the end of the program, we had to do like a clinical skills test where we'd work on dummies and show off our skills, and they would give us different scenarios that we would work with and prove that we can like properly diagnose and handle emergency situations. And then once I passed that portion, I had to register for the North Carolina exam from the Department of EMS, and it was a very fair exam, and it was again multiple choice, and I think you can take it 3 times max before you have to retake the course. But you can either take the North Carolina exam or you can take the national exam. You can do either to be able to practice as an EMT in North Carolina, but if you want to go out of state, you'd have to take the national exam. That's just the logistics of being an EMT. And then to put that to practice, I'm an EMT basic, by the way, I didn't clarify. You can use that to work on an ambulance, which is a big commitment, but you can volunteer at different EMS stations. But what that would entail is normally you would have like 12-hour shifts. So that's why a lot of times people recommend doing the CNA route, because there is more flexibility and it is generally easier to get a job. I'd like to see the chat. Do you recommend getting both certifications or just one? I would just get one. I feel like there's no reason to get more because the purpose is to try to get that direct patient care and work on your bedside manner, talk to patients, interact with them. And you can get that by both an EMT or a CNA. They might just be slightly different experiences. CNA definitely focuses more on the nursing application, while EMT is, again, emergency focused. One thing I will say about getting an EMT certification is a lot of times I find in the Triangle area, if you look on EPAC, which is the career development page where you can apply to jobs, they offer a lot of medical assistant positions that will allow you to just have an EMT certification rather than a medical assistant certification. So that's a really cool opportunity if you have an EMT. And then I also know there's some volunteer opportunities at like health clinics where you could work in intake triage as an EMT.
So one thing I want to touch upon just real quick, as far as do you recommend both getting both certificates or just one? So obviously both are great for patient care hours. When I was in this club last year, I heard different PAs come to talk and everything. And they just said that in EMT, obviously you learn more in the field and you get to practice more stuff. So that did help them prepare more like during PA school. So it was like a little bit less information they had to learn. So that's just an option that I'm throwing out there.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I also heard though that they say to be a little wary of what you learn as an EMT because it is emergency medicine and that you're going to have to relearn literally everything when you go to PA school because it's a whole different way of approaching medicine. Said if you're volunteering as an EMT, do you get volunteer hours? You would get patient care hours. If you're working as a volunteer EMT, I guess you would also get volunteer hours, but both working as a CNA and an EMT, you would get direct patient care hours guaranteed based on every program that I've ever looked at. Other hours, depending on what you do, some programs may accept it, some don't. I saw earlier someone asked about being a pharmacy technician. I know a lot of programs that I looked at didn't allow that for patient care hours. That would be good experience to add, but it wouldn't count towards that like patient care experience. Should I talk about my other?
Sure. Just going off yours, I just want to touch upon one thing.
Yeah.
So generally people recommend that you either do CNA or EMT to get hours because it's universally accepted.
Yeah.
So for like other jobs such as like a medical scribe or something, since you're not directly touching the patient, the PA school may not accept that as patient care hours. So you just want to be careful as to what you're doing and what schools you're applying to. If you know definitely like I want to apply to these 3 schools and they all take medical scribe as a job, that's perfect. Like go for it. Just always be sure. And if you're unsure of where you want to apply, EMT, CNA, perfect start. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and you also, if you have a program in mind, email them. They are always happy to answer. You can explain exactly what you're doing, and if they accept that, they will tell you. If they don't, they'll tell you. I just want to say one more thing that I've done that can count as patient care hours and doesn't require certification, and that's being a rehabilitation technician, which is basically, it's like home health care. You're not directly touching the patient most of the time, but what you are doing is you're working with an individual that either has an intellectual or developmental disability, and you're helping them towards their personal goals, which could include working on personal hygiene, working on career goals, and everything in between. And that would not require like a certification. And I know some programs do accept that as direct patient care. What I would say about that, it's a good way to get hours, but I've also talked to programs where they say that it's good experience and it does help you with the hours, but the quality of it isn't as high as being a CNA or an EMT. So they'd want you to supplement the hours with like a higher quality patient care, which would be like a medical assistant, an EMT, or something where you're really touching a patient and practicing your skills. That's what I've heard. And I think that's all I have to say about like patient care. We'll get into volunteer later, right? Okay. Any questions? Oh, okay. As an EMT, do you only work in an ambulance? No. A lot of times people do work in an ambulance as an EMT. That's a big one. But a lot of times I have seen you could work in an emergency department. You can work in the intake triage part of that. You also, as I said before, some like, what's it called, private practices will take medical assistants that have an EMT certification, and they'll do some extra training with them so they don't need to get the actual medical assistant certification. That answers the question.
All right, any more questions about EMT? If not, we're gonna segue into volunteer or rehabilitation tech. If you have that too, go for it. No?
Can you get patient care hours for getting a certification? I don't know if this answers the question, but training hours that you get while doing a certification does not count towards your patient care hours. So anything I did like during my EMT course or during Kaitlyn's CNA course wouldn't add to your patient care hours.
All right, so actually Caroline's gonna talk about being a medical scribe right now, so go ahead.
So I am a medical scribe at Rex, just down the road from campus. A few things they touched on scribes. So the scribe's main role is to do the documentation for the patient encounter. And as you'll learn, working in the healthcare profession is the documentation is so important. Not only to document everything about the encounter, but also for insurance purposes and liability reasons later on if something were to happen. So to become a scribe, you don't need a certification, which is really cool because they do count for your patient care hours. You just need, most scribe companies require just some prerequisites, like ones that you would already be getting for nursing school or PA school, such as medical terminology, anatomy and physiology 1 and 2. So then I was going to say a great way to work on like getting towards your patient care hours now would be to start taking those prerequisites, and that gets you ahead of the game. And then when COVID is done or whatever, and companies are hiring and hospitals are not on a hiring freeze, then you'll be ready to apply. So obviously they touched on CNA and EMT, and those are great opportunities. Scribing is, I think, more of like a newer way to get patient care hours. I don't think it's as, like Kaitlyn said, some schools are kind of like hesitant on accepting it right now. I think it's becoming a lot more accepted just because of like it is a really great experience. I'm in the emergency department and I see so much. I work with physicians and physician assistants, and you're just sitting there like a fly on the wall documenting everything, whether it's like you learn about all these medications. When there's a code going on, the EMT brings in this code. You have to write down when they're giving epi and when they're giving all these drugs, when they're doing compressions, and you're learning all of this. And at first it's so new to you and you're like, what the heck is all this? But you slowly learn, and like I've been doing it for about a year now. And the amount of like medications I know, and just like orders when a patient comes in with abdominal pain, for example, like it comes to my mind already, like what as a provider I would be ordering. And I think that PA schools and other professional careers, like they're realizing how much of like a help that is already going to school. And I've also heard of, with the people I've worked with, they have talked about coming out of PA school, for example, and having to learning like how to chart and document this patient experience. And they learn that obviously after they've already learned everything else in PA school. That's kind of like the last thing. And they say it's so hard for them, and like it becomes a whole new obstacle to tackle. And as a scribe, you're learning that like before you're even going to school. So that's really cool. I also wanted to mention it is paid. So it is paid patient care hours. So you're getting hours and you're getting paid. Yeah. And then I was just also going to touch on like all my coworkers, like everybody is on the same path. So it's a motivating environment, and you're learning how to like encounter not only patients and physicians and physician assistants, but nurses, and just how to act in the hospital setting or a private practice, like all those different settings. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. Like I said, a great way to get started now would be to start getting those prerequisites that you need to become a medical scribe. And I actually do know that some scribe companies are hiring right now. The company I work for, we actually have new scribes coming on right now. So look into it and look online. So not all things are shut down because of COVID. I know a lot of things are, but we did just get a few new scribes, so I know we're not. If you have any questions, though, you can type them in. I'm happy to answer. I think that's it.
One thing to say to that, though, is I've heard that medical scribes, the beauty of it, too, is you really get to know providers, and you get to make connections with providers and ask them questions, which is something that a lot of EMTs don't get because normally they're outside the hospital and aren't actually engaging with providers like PAs.
Yeah, I will touch on that. So at the hospital I work at, I work with about 20 plus physicians, and then an additional about 20 physician assistants. And they all know that we're in this role to get our hours, and they want us to ask questions. And if we don't know something, they want us to ask them. And kind of like Haley said, she was like, people help you along your way, and now all you want to do is help people because of how much people helped you. And I really understand that, because the people I work with are so willing to help and answer all the questions. Somebody said, are the hours for a medical scribe flexible, especially with being in school right now? Yeah, so we have about, I'd say 20 scribes at my site. And I also did want to touch on the fact that as a scribe, you have to work the hours of a provider. So my hours might be really weird for a job in college, but I'm working the shifts that a doctor would work or that a PA would work. So I work about 3 days a week, and they're 8 to 10 hour shifts. But I mean, that's how it's going to be when we are professionals. Those are the shifts we're going to be working, and I'm just getting used to it now. But so a lot of my shifts are 10 hours, maybe 11A to 9, or overnight shifts. But yeah, it's flexible, and you can work as little or as much as we want. Yeah, I wouldn't let the hours or the commitment hold you back from being a scribe. Yeah.
Someone asked the difference between a medical assistant and a CNA. So they are very different jobs. So a CNA, you either work in a hospice home or a nursing home, something like that, and you basically stick to your few patients and you help them with their daily activities and stuff. So you can walk them, you can bathe them, you can do a bunch of different help them eat and stuff like that. That is very easy to get a job, as I said before. A medical assistant, that is I've never done it before, so I can't really speak too much about it, but it's more you go in and get patients' histories and stuff like that. It's much harder to find a job. You kind of need to have connections in order to be able to do it, which is why I can't really speak a whole lot about it. Do you have something else?
Oh, yeah, only a little bit. I have some friends who work as a medical assistant. I know they do post medical assistant positions on EPAC. Normally that is geared more to seniors because they would ask for a 1 or 2 year gap year, basically. They'd want a commitment from you, and a lot of times they'll either take no experience and they say this is geared toward people who want to go be a PA or an MD, or it will say have an EMT certification or something like that. And so you could apply to jobs on there. It is harder to get, but my friend's experience was he actually got his job because he was volunteering in a hospital, and they gave him a connection to get to this private practice. And he just takes in patients, takes their vitals, their history. He's in charge of calling them back to follow up, and he just works pretty closely with the providers and can help on certain procedures. So it's pretty cool.
All right, any more questions about the medical scribe? No? Okay. So last section, so volunteer.
Yeah, and I'll just touch briefly. I will say, based on certification, and someone asked earlier whether or not you would want to do multiple certifications, if it would help your resume, things like that. In previous years, we've had multiple speakers come in and say, if you're not going to use the certification, do not get it, because just having the certification on your resume is not going to do a lot. The schools will be like, okay, why didn't you use it? You spent hundreds of dollars trying to get this class, and it took time and effort. So definitely show that you have follow through, because if you're going to get a CNA certification or an EMT certification, the chances are you are not going to use them both. I mean, if you are, power to you. But just do something that's going to be worth your time and your effort. You don't want to waste money getting like multiple certifications and not use them. And then there are some facilities that we have spoken to in the past, such as Maxim. I don't know if you guys remember them, but they love to come to our club. So hopefully we can get them to come speak again. And I'm not really sure what their hiring position is right now.
They're always hiring hab techs.
Are they doing what?
They're like always hiring hab techs.
Right. So don't be afraid of not having experience, because companies like this are always seeking us out because they want to have people to train. They're willing to go through the effort because they see that, like, students like you guys in this club, you want the hours, you want to put in the effort. And so they'll definitely put you through the training. So never let a lack of experience deter you, because there's always someone that's willing to train you. And then about volunteering, so that's kind of where I have really done my experience mostly, because I am like the nursing side. We don't require hours or anything like that. So I do volunteering, one, because I love it, and two, because it looks like really good to show that, you know, you're contributing in some way. You have some aspect in the field. There are positions that you can be with patients. So for a few years, I actually worked in a pediatric playroom, and that was amazing because each day, like, I did interact with those patients hands-on. I really got to learn more about the different people within the field, like working around me in the hospital. They're, again, willing to tell you about what they're doing. They want you to know. So if you want a position that is working with patients, they're definitely available. I will say that you may have to jump through a few more hoops for those positions. They're a little bit more rare. If you need help with that, you can always email me. And then I think that volunteering is always beneficial onto a resume, and it's really good to reflect on, because you never know where you'll be placed or how it can impact you in the future. So just keep your mind open for anything. And right now, I know it is difficult to get actual placements in hospitals, and it's difficult to actually get your foot in the door right now. So there are some virtual volunteer opportunities that an old professor sent out. Mind you, again, this will not count towards your hours, but it is something really beneficial to have on your resume and to show that you're being proactive. Like, if you cannot get a job right now, or if you, for whatever reason, you are not willing to kind of go out in the current climate, then that is perfectly fine. But show that you're putting in effort in any way that you can. And I think that schools will really look onto that and take it into consideration. So I'll show you this like really, really quick, and I'll send it out in the email. But let's see if you guys can see this. Oh, well, okay. No, he's not going to let me. And we're running over time anyways, but I'll send out a list of different virtual volunteer opportunities. They're really quick. You can do them just like alongside your classes. They're really easy, but places are always looking. So there's always a way to get involved and really amp up your experience and your resume and things to reflect on. Are there any questions?
So you guys are all free to go. If you don't have any questions, we'll hang back a little bit. But thank you all so much for coming to the meeting. I will send out an email tomorrow with the link to this and a brief description of the jobs that we talked about tonight. So thank you all. You're free to go, and I'll see you next month at our nursing meeting. All right, let's see.
Okay, so for the pediatric playroom, you guys can reflect more on like the PA side. I know when schools have come to talk in the past that some of them do say they'll count any and all experience, like when you are with a patient, when you're hands-on. Other schools are more specific. So again, look into the school that you want to go to, because they can be more particular, but because that was so hands-on, it was a direct patient care. Like I was taking patients out of their rooms. I was always like getting a group of children and herding them towards the playroom. So it is definitely something that is reflective of a different position like a CNA or more hands-on position. So from my perspective, it would count, but
When in doubt, ask the program. That's what they always, right? When in doubt, just ask the program.
right. They love to hear from you guys. So if you have a question, email them. They will talk to you forever.
It also puts your name out there and they know that you're interested in the program, which is great.
Let's see if there's
Online tip on ways to be successful in online classes, if you want to talk about that.
I have always taken a few online classes. I think I've taken more than most. Each semester I have at least 2 or 3. It just happened that way. So this semester is less weird for me than perhaps other people. For online classes, though, I think setting a schedule is really helpful. For some, that's a little type A, but I'm someone that if I keep pushing it off, then it will never get done. And prioritizing what is most important helps me. Like if I know that a paper, like a really important paper for this class is due, but then like a small like reading is due, obviously I'm going to do the paper first. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I would just say to have a schedule, like use a calendar to put out all of your due dates and stuff like that, just so you make sure you stay on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
Post-it notes are like my thing. So like I'll make a whole list of what I have to get done for the week, and then I'll do a post-it note for each day of what I want to get done that day, just to try to stay on track with
Yeah,
like
like
a
that.
week's worth of work.
Yeah.
Also,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
Oh, for a couple of my classes, they gave out like calendars of like what lecture you should watch each day. So I definitely try to stick with that plan, so I don't fall behind on my lectures because there are so many in the week, you know.
Mm-hmm. I'm really bad at that, but yeah. It's
I was
definitely a
just
thing.
gonna answer this question really quick because I saw she was still on the call. She said, "How competitive is it to become a medical scribe?" I would say if you have like the prereqs I was talking about, and you're focused and determined, you will likely get placed somewhere. There are like a lot of sites. ER is one of them, but they're also in private practices and breast cancer clinics and all over. I would say like maybe if you wanted to be in the ER and they didn't think you were ready, you might not be placed there. But if you just want to be a medical scribe and you have your prereqs and you're focused, I would say you have a good chance. So I would definitely apply and get it out there. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Also, you never know what position that you will find most compelling, like until you're in it. It's nice to have like a set idea of what you'll like and stuff like that, but sometimes you'll get randomly placed somewhere and you'll end up loving it. I mean, you might also hate it, but you could love it.
Your perspective, you can always quit, which is something that people can't do. If you feel like you are in a position where you're not being treated right or you're really just not enjoying it and want a different experience, it is okay to quit and look for something else. Your mental health is important.
Yeah.
And then related to COVID, I know everyone's freaking out about how programs are going to accept like new applicants with the conditions. Everyone's in the same boat. It will be different, but I would try not to panic. And taking a gap year or 2 gap years, in the long run, it might even help you as a provider because you just get more experience.
We used to have a student whose family was really onto her about not taking a gap year. They did not think that it was appropriate. They didn't think that it was a normal thing to do. And we always tried to like get through. And then she would ask every single meeting if that was like something that schools looked down upon or anything. And each time the schools would always emphasize how more time can do nothing but help you in the long run. Taking that time to get the experience, to make sure that this is what you want to do in your career, to take care of your mental health, your physical health, things like that, it's only going to make you a better PA. And in the end, it definitely shows your dedication if you have like this long plan. Like it's like they say, a lot of PAs are definitely on like, you know, mid to older range. So not many are fresh out of school. So take time. Yeah. Like you said, I think schools will definitely take it into account.
All right, I think we've answered everything.
Yeah, I'm glad people are enjoying these meetings. I thought that was really a good one.
Oh, I thought that
Yeah.
was perfect.
If you guys have more questions or specific questions for each of us, since we have different perspectives, definitely email us. All of our stuff is on the Get Involved page, so we're always willing to answer more questions. We have a nursing meeting next month, so yay!
Cool.
So I think in the email tomorrow, I'm gonna send out the Zoom link, obviously, or like this meeting link, and I will end this meeting actually.